Okay, we're going to start discussing Tennessee Williams and A Streetcar Named Desire. So Tennessee Williams is a very well-known American playwright of this particular time period after World War II. Streetcar Named Desire was performed on Broadway in 1947, and it ran for 2 years straight with 855 performances. So, I mean, that is an incredible number of performances in 2 years. And this particular play was developed into a screenplay in 1951 that Tennessee Williams actually helped write. Some of the things were changed from the play to the film, as often happens, but Williams was specifically involved with that project. Interestingly, the film and the play had almost the exact same cast. The one difference would be Blanche in the play was played by Jessica Tandy. She won a Tony Award for her portrayal of Blanche in the play, and in the film version, Vivien Leigh played Blanche, and she won an Oscar for her portrayal of Blanche. So clearly Blanche was a powerful, interesting character depicted by both of these women in very different genres. One of the things that's interesting, and there's a lot of things interesting about this particular play and how it intersects with Tennessee Williams' life, but one, he did live in New Orleans for a while, and this is a setting for Streetcar. Also, there was a period of his life when he worked in a shoe factory, and he had a co-worker friend named Stanley Kowalski. And so, as you know by now, Stanley is one of the main characters in the play. Tennessee Williams had a very turbulent life. He struggled with drugs. He struggled with mental instability. He seemed to always seek after those things that were destructive. But in spite of all that, he kept writing. And he was a very prolific playwright and worked very, very, very hard, and seemed to always be fighting, struggling with something inside of himself. Another thing that's interesting is that you see very early on in this play, if you have even read this, just the first scene, that there's going to be a conflict, and a major conflict between Blanche and Stanley. And so I want you to think about, as you're reading through the play, what worldviews each of them represents. Because remember, if you're thinking in terms of hegemony and the personal being political, we need to look for ways that characters represent larger groups of people and what those power relationships are. So think about what worldviews are at play with Blanche. What does she represent beyond her character? What does Stanley represent beyond his character? And in keeping with this notion of power struggle, who wins in the end? And what might Tennessee Williams be saying about who wins? So I do want you to think about that as we begin talking about the play. Interestingly, Tennessee Williams said that he didn't side with one of these characters over the other, but that he is most like, he said, Blanche, that his character most closely aligns with Blanche. So let's dive into the play a little bit and look at scene 1. After this particular lecture, you will see a clip from the movie of A Streetcar, the 51 movie with Vivien Leigh and Marlon Brando. And so it will be the moment when Stanley and Blanche meet. And so I do want you to reread that scene as they meet, and I think you can see the tension, the differences in their characters very, very starkly when you watch that scene. So let's start with Blanche first and think about the kind of character that she is. If we get in the very, very beginning of the play, when you're given the stage directions, that's in italics, pay attention to that, read it. If you read the play the first time or read this first scene the first time without reading the italicized portions, go back, because For Williams, particularly in this play, we get a lot of insight about these characters inside of those stage directions. So, for example, we find out about Blanche, this statement here, that her appearance is incongruous to the setting. So where she shows up. So the way she looks is very incongruous to where she finds Stella and Stanley living. She is daintily dressed in a white suit with a fluffy bodice, necklace and earrings of pearl, white gloves and hat, looking as if she were arriving at a summer tea or cocktail party in the Garden District. She is about 5 years older than Stella. Her delicate beauty must avoid a strong light. There is something about her uncertain manner as well as her white clothes that suggests a moth. So she's this ephemeral, daintily dressed, almost, as it says, incongruous for the setting, like she's going to a tea party. So you get the sense that she's higher class or presents herself that way. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But so we've got this sense that she is, like this moth, very vulnerable. And as you read through the scene, you start realizing that she's nervous, she's overwrought, that she is vain. She's very concerned with her looks and her appearance, and she is 100% in complete contrast to Stanley as far as appearance and behavior goes. Belle Reve comes into play. We find out about that this was the old family plantation of Stella and Blanche, that it was lost by a mortgage. We find out that later, but we find out in scene 1 that she's tried to keep it together, but death after death after death, she's the only one left. She couldn't afford it, and so Belle Reve is lost, and the implication is that she has nowhere else to go, that she's homeless. So, however, she wants to present herself in a certain way, and that way is high class, is sophisticated, and as we'll find out through the play, younger than she actually is. She makes a very big deal throughout the play of being in soft lighting or being, in darker spaces so that her age can't be as readily made out. She says at one point in scene 1, "Turn that overlight off, turn that off. I won't be looked at in this merciless glare." Stella laughs and complies. "Come back here now. Oh, my baby, Stella. Stella for Star." She embraces her again. "I thought you would never come back to this horrible place. What am I saying? I didn't mean to say that. I meant to be nice about it and say, oh, what a convenient location and such. Ha, ha, ha. Precious lamb, you haven't said a word to me." And then Stella says, "Well, you haven't given me a chance to, honey." So she's talkative, she's judgmental, and doesn't want to be seen in full light because she's so concerned about her age. Interestingly, she's a big drinker, but she doesn't want to be perceived as that either. At one point in this scene, she says, "1 is my limit," after clearly she's already had a couple of drinks. So just, some clear indications that she wants to present herself a particular way. We also get the sense that she is emotionally fragile, as she talks about how much she's been through, her exhaustion, her nerves breaking, and those types of things. So she does come across as this moth, very fragile emotionally, very fragile physically, but yet also somewhere deep inside some sense of maybe strength, that she's held it together despite those things in her character. And here she is trying to work some things out. And then we turn to Stanley in this scene, and Stella herself describes Stanley as a different species. Um, Now, this could mean a bunch of different things. It could mean a different species from background-wise, and the way that these two groups of people have been raised. Stella and Blanche were clearly raised genteelly on a plantation in Mississippi. Stanley, not so much, and that is clear. Um, and then we get this description about Stanley toward the end of scene 1. He is of medium height, about 5 feet 8 or 9, and strongly, compactly built. Animal joy in his being is implicit in all his movements and attitudes. Since earliest manhood, the center of his life has been pleasure with women, the giving and taking of it, not with weak indulgence dependently, but with the power and pride of a richly feathered male bird among hens. Branching out from his complete and satisfying center are all the auxiliary channels of his life, such as his heartiness with men, his appreciation of rough manner, his love of good drink and food and games, his car, his radio, everything that is his, that bears his emblem of the gaudy seed bearer. He sizes women up at a glance, with sexual classifications, crude images flashing to his mind and determining the way he smiles at them. So very much a contrast here to Blanche. He is definitely an unrefined type, a different species. He's straightforward. He's simple. He is, not pretending to be something that he's not, unlike Blanche is. So as we start the play and continue into the next couple of scenes, I want you to keep this sort of dichotomy in mind. And, what worldviews are these characters representing, and who's going to win in the end, do you think? So watch the little film clip right after this lecture, and you'll be able to see how the interactions between Blanche and Stanley when they first meet.